The essence of a modern state is centralized authority, bureaucratic management, the efficient delivery of the public services that only a state can provide. Persia provided fewer services than a modern state, and outsourced much of the work to officials in semi-autonomous political dependencies. But the principle was there. As to the early modern states to which our own political systems are the heirs, Louis XIV may have said "L'État c'est moi," but he knew what a state was, a legal person rather than a physical one. It was the state's all-encompassing authority that he embodied in his own majestic person. It was on the state's behalf that he was obsessed with the need to know whatever could be known about the resources of his kingdom and the lives of his subjects, so that he could better manage their lives and resources for their own welfare. The contrast between the Persian state, and by the same token the late imperial Roman, Bismarckian, or modern European state, and the Greek polis is far from the only theme that dominates this story. A familiar contrast is between Athenian and Roman notions of freedom and citizenship. The Athenians practiced a form of unfiltered, direct democracy that the Romans thought a recipe for chaos. The Romans gave ordinary free and male persons a role in politics, but a carefully structured and controlled one. Roman freedom was most basically a matter of not being a slave. Secondarily, it was the possession of a legal status, being able to secure one's rights in court. Thirdly, it carried political rights and duties, carefully graded according to one's financial status. It was also a status that exposed any free individual to taxation and military service, again according to financial capacity. As Rome grew, citizenship was extended to conquered cities, initially without extending the voting rights that the Romans had. The civis sine suffragio, a citizen without a vote, was nonetheless a free man. He could say civis Romanus sum, I am a Roman citizen, and it meant something real, particularly if he was facing a court, or afraid that an official might be about to have him scourged or detained without the prospect of a fair trial. The Athenian obsession with the right to speak and vote in the assembly ruled out the thought that a civis sine suffragio was fully a free man. It ruled out also the thought that a citizen who was entitled to vote but not to hold any sort of judicial position was fully a free man. The Athenians associated freedom with unvarnished political equality, isagoria, or equal rights in the assembly, and they would have regarded the Roman restrictions on access to judicial and political office as oligarchical. Variations on the argument between Athens and Rome have dominated European and American political thought since the English Civil War of the 1640s. How far we can, indeed how far we should be tempted to try to follow the Athenians in securing the political equality of all citizens in the face of differences in wealth, education, civic-mindedness, competence, or public spirit is an unanswered question. Much of the time, the question goes unasked in prosperous liberal democracies like Britain or the United States, because most of us see political equality as exhausted by one person, one vote, and dig no deeper. We know that one person, one vote coexists with the better off and better organized buying influence through lobbying, campaign contributions, and use of the mass media, but we find ourselves puzzled to balance a belief that everyone has the right to use his or her resources to influence government, which is certainly one form of political equality, with our sense that excessive inequality of political resources undermines democracy. We must not sentimentalize the distant past when we wonder whether the better off have too much political power. Although they often turned on them and dismissed them at a moment's notice, the Athenians were led by men of good family. Nor should we think that the only source of political inequality in the modern world is the ability of the well-off to convert money into influence by buying politicians' loyalty. If the economically